Greetings. I'm Father Bob Yezel, and I'm retired from Holy Cross Church in DeWitt and also from the Diocese of Syracuse. I'm very excited to welcome you to our new website, especially in light of COVID. So many of us have been hit by that terrible, terrible pandemic. I spent 7 months in hospitals and rehabs. Perhaps you or your loved one has as well. And so today we're finding a new way to come to you, and that's by the website. I pray that this brings you great peace, consolation, and new spiritual insights. During the past year and a half, Father Cliff Auth and Katie Tovar have certainly been running a wonderful program. Father Cliff is from St. Augustine's in Baldwinsville and St. Mary's in Baldwinsville. Katie Tovar, you know, is a standard person at the CARE program. She keeps us together. She's the backbone of the organization. I'm so grateful to both of those wonderful people for keeping the program going and helping us to come to you now via the website. I pray that as we have new speakers and we have some new topics, we can have some new insights. And I'm sure that's going to happen as we come out of the cocoons we've all been in and move on in life. And so we're excited about having you get excited with us and be a part of our community as well. So thank you for being with us today. And thank you for all that you do, and thank you for your prayers. God bless you, and you have a great day.
Today, we're here to talk about surviving the pandemic. COVID and the subsequent quarantine has been difficult for all of us, some more than others. Today, we have three lovely ladies who have weathered the COVID differently. One, LYNN, literally survived the virus. Two, Liz and Linda helped others during the lockdown to keep going and to help them through the pandemic itself. So rather than introduce them myself, I'm going to bail and let each of them introduce themselves. So Lynn, let me begin with you, and will you please tell us about your relationship with CARE?
I'm LYNN McMartin, and I am the co-founder of CARE, of the Center for Aging, Resources, and Enrichment. I was a human resource director for Lemoyne College for 30 years, and when I retired, I realized that I needed to still give back. And the individuals who I felt the most needed me were the retirees of Lemoyne. And it basically started out by being an organization that I was going to develop for just Lemoyne retirees. But the alumni became part of that, and then we decided that go out in the community, there was many more needs that we could supply to those individuals than as a hub and a resource without all the services we currently have in the community. So we just want to make them available to the elders.
Well, those of us in the community are glad that you decided to spread it wider and wider. Linda, please tell us about IVC, or the Ignatian Volunteer Corps, and how you're involved with it and how IVC and CARE work together.
Thanks, Maryanne. I am Linda Zimmerman, and I am the director of the Ignatian Volunteer Corps in the Syracuse area. It's one of 20-plus regions throughout the United States. I got involved with the Ignatian Volunteer Corps after going through a spiritual process that took about 30 weeks through Lemoyne College. And after that, I became a volunteer for the Ignatian Volunteer Corps, or IVC. And over the last 4 years, I've been the director.
And how does it interface with CARE?
Early on, as CARE was forming, I had a couple conversations with folks, and we realized that we were both very, very interested in the 50-plus, age 50-plus population, and that spirituality was a big component of that, as well as building community and doing service. So when Kate and I spoke, we realized that it was a natural partnership, and we were already a partner with Lemoyne College, so this just fit perfectly.
Great. I'll mention that Kate is the director of CARE, and can I also say the daughter of LYNN? So we have an extra connection going. So Liz, even though I'm pretty sure you didn't have COVID yourself, How were you able to weather the pandemic, and how did you get involved with IVC?
Hi, I'm Liz Fleury, and I am an Ignatian Volunteer Corps member. I think IVC found me, really. I had gone to one of the Meeting Christ in prayer groups at Lemoyne. I'm an adjunct, by the way. I work for the Education Department supervising student teachers. I had gone, and I was there early. And that's not like me. I'm usually not anywhere early. And I had a conversation with Ron Russell, who I think might have been the former director of IVC. And he kept talking about IVC. And I asked him what it was, and it just went from there. He introduced me to Linda, and I just felt a calling that this is something that I could do. It was, as I said, IVC found me, and I'm very grateful. I've never looked back.
And we're grateful that IVC found you and you found IVC. So I'm going to pick on you for a minute, Lynn, and ask you to talk to us about your experience personally with COVID and how it affected you personally.
Well, as a survivor, it's humbling because you realize how vulnerable an individual is. I lived in Florida at the time. I lived there 8 months a year. And I was very alone there because my daughter's here and my whole family's here. My partner and I were very aware of COVID, but it was very early in the process. It was March of 2020. Wow. And there was just beginning to break in here. We were practicing, the protocols. We had guests at our home, but we have a very large area outdoor space, so we had never been in contact other than outdoors. And my partner had a respiratory infection, and he called our concierge doctor and got drugs for that, and what we thought was a respiratory infection. 5 days later, I ended up not being able to get out of bed, and it just hit like a Mack truck. It was one day, one thing, one day the next. And I was in bed for 18 days. 5 of those days, I did not eat or sleep or drink. I had a concierge doctor come in with his nurse to give me antibiotics and fluids. And I don't remember anything about those 5 days. But I realized as I got better, the isolation feature of individuals who were hospitalized, how difficult that must be, because you cannot get out of bed, you cannot do anything on your own. And then for me, if I had been in the hospital, I don't think I would have had the wherewithal to fight through it, because it was a fight. You had to personally decide that this is what you wanted to do. And I think my faith played a huge part in what I got through. Coming on the other side of it, I had to go with a personal trainer 3 days a week to learn to walk and stand up and just move around again. So I'm very grateful and very humbled by the experience I had. And it has brought me to a much bigger appreciation for isolation, for individuals who are in nursing homes and not having their families there. And as me and as others have lost very, very good friends, it is something that I don't think will ever be the same for me. It's changed my life.
Wow. Thank you. We hear about the long-termers or long haulers with COVID. Do you have side effects that have been with you that you feel are?
You do, and they come out of nowhere. I mean, like I had an incident this summer where my entire body was extremely, it's dry skin and itchy, and like needles were going in my skin, and I couldn't figure it, and I've never had that before. I went to a dermatologist, I went to a physical doctor, physician, and they all looked at me and said, "This is so weird. I don't know what it is." I went online and researched the European countries, and they are all finding that you have this type of thing that happens. It's inflammation in your body that from under stress will come out in different ways, and it comes out that one of those ways. So it's you never know what you're going to wake up to. You can even have them, and they're not as severe as other things I've heard. But yeah, there's something that changes in your body.
Well, you mentioned your spirituality, so I'm going to say a quick prayer. Thank God that you survived.
Well, thank you.
And I hope these additional symptoms are gone permanently.
Well, thank you. I think that's something that I am thankful for every day. And Father Yezel was having COVID about the same time I did. And so when I was recovering, there was not enough prayers, so I could say for him, because I know how difficult it was, and for many other people. So I still, every night, I make sure that they're in my prayers.
Yeah. Well, Father Yezel, for those of you who don't know, was really very responsible for getting a lot of the programming up and running and picking speakers in previous years. And I know he's involved still, but I also know that he too has some of those long-term residual effects of COVID. So we continue to pray for all those folks. Linda, Lynn has given us a picture of how she survived COVID. But I know during this time, we had people who we normally would be visiting on a regular basis. Our volunteers at IVC would have been visiting people. And they were giving services that no longer could probably be given. How did IVC keep going during this difficult time when we were all locked down?
Good question. At IVC, I really had to pivot from a face-to-face position in terms of coordinating all of the efforts of our service corps members to either telephone, computer, those kinds of things. And what we did on a national level is started offering opportunities for people to do webinars and get ongoing spirituality. As I mentioned, IVC kind of has three pillars. So the service pillar, where we go out and help our partner agencies, in some cases, as you mentioned, was not able to be done. So many of our volunteers were able to do things, including Liz, and myself, were able to do things by using different platforms such as Zoom and things like that. We did have several volunteers who were still able to do their service in person. And we were very grateful for that. Over the whole year, we kept everyone engaged, whether it was service or beyond, in the spiritual component of IVC, which was our monthly meetings online, as well as weekly newsletters identifying all of the spirituality opportunities that week. We did several prayer sessions. And one of the things we instituted was something called the Ignatian Book of Days, where our volunteers read the daily reading. And once a week, we had a group that talked over what did that mean to us, what hit us this week, what really meant something to us, what shifted our thinking. And so that worked very, very well. So it was really being able to be flexible. Some of our folks are not computer users or email users, and so their big contact with us was through face-to-face. So that became phone calls for me in terms of reaching out to everyone that we hadn't seen. And then over time, other volunteers reached out to volunteers that couldn't make use of a Zoom platform, for example.
And Liz, how did you get through this?
Well, I have to say, Linda really was a lifeline. She kept us going. It was very humbling. I was one of those people who didn't lose my opportunity for my service. And I found myself feeling sorry for the people who couldn't. But Linda, in the way that she does, guided by the Holy Spirit, reminded me of all the different things that people were doing behind the scenes. So maybe they weren't actively involved in the type of service they had been doing. But we had someone who made hundreds, if not close to 1,000 masks. I mean, and she's someone who couldn't do the service she was doing, but she found ways to keep going. And those are the kind of stories Linda just kept, she made everything valuable and important for us, and really was such a lifeline, and I thank her for it. And her weekly Ignatian Book of Days, we were able to make connections to what was going on in our lives and with COVID, and we always found something that we could use to help us to keep moving forward. And I think that's what it was. We weren't mired, we just kept moving forward. And I think that was the big message that we took from that. specifically for my service, I work with the Lemoyne College C-STEP program, which is Collegiate Science Technology Entry Program. And I serve as a writing tutor, pretty much mentor. It was easy for me to transition to an online platform rather than going to Lemoyne, to Romero Hall. And I find myself preferring that even now, because I'm not spending time commuting. I'm not spending time limited to a certain hours. I was able to be open to students during the time that they needed me to help. So it was interesting in the beginning. It was even before COVID had hit, and I had been on vacation, and I could still continue through these Zoom meetings to meet with students. And they had to learn at that point. This was maybe early in 2020. How to get through doing this. So that was very interesting for me. But what I did to prepare for this is I went back and I looked in my journal where I had kept track of all my different student meetings, and to see if I could notice a trend or a pattern. And I really didn't mention anything. There was nothing in there about COVID or being locked down. It was just at home now, and that was all that I had written down. And instead of helping students with essays and personal statements, and these are students, a lot of them are well, you can help me here. They're students who are underserved, come from underserved populations and underrepresented in the STEM field. A lot are first-generation college students. Maybe English isn't their first language. Come with many refugees. So it was something I found that at first I was just providing a support to help them with their writing, kind of like as a writing tutor. But as the year went on, I noticed changes in what I had written down, and especially hearing their stories, the students' stories. And you probably got this too, this helping students who were applying like to medical school or pharmacy school. All of a sudden there was a COVID prompt that they had. It was like one of their supplemental questions, and the students called it the COVID question. And it was just like what you're talking about now. How did COVID impact your education? How did you survive? And all of a sudden I realized when, yes, I might be working with their writing, but hearing their story, and it really was a survival, but maybe an economic survival. And not some of the students, it was just so hard not meeting with their professors face to face, and you could just hear those stories. And I realized that my work was shifting, and instead of working for them, I was actually with them, and it became more of an accompaniment now. So I was being led along by their stories, and it was just beautiful for me, and I'm so grateful for that.
Aren't you glad that I asked you to do this?
Yes.
So you could look back and remember
it
that?
It was wonderful.
That is true, though.
And to see those smiles, like students, they had Zoom meeting after Zoom meeting, and another Zoom meeting, and and all of a sudden, you talk to them about what they've written in their statements, their essays. And I think, that this is a theme that I'm hearing. And I saw your eyes light up when you talk about this. So it wasn't that we lost that contact. I think we worked very hard to maintain it. It just wasn't on my schedule. At that time, I was open to working with them on their time, and that made a big difference for me to be able to do that.
And it probably did for them, because you were more available than you had ever been before. And that's really, I think, if I'm hearing you and Linda, the accompaniment of people. Because we know that Black and brown and poor people were more adversely affected and are still more adversely affected during COVID than some of the rest of us who have a better economic status. So, Linda, it seems as if this isn't the only way in which IVC, Liz isn't the only one in IVC who was able to continue to accompany people who really were suffering even maybe more so than they were prior to the onset of the pandemic.
What we found within our partner agencies and the participants that we work with is there was so much more struggle because of inability to work, whether they were ill or their job was closed down. Also, food was an issue. And, many of the folks that we work with, say refugee resettlement, high school students, they were getting their food dropped off for the week. It became the necessities of life. I think, as LYNN mentioned, it's very humbling. The basic necessities of life: shelter, food, ability to pay rent. Those were problems that as we are accompanying the folks that we volunteer for, those became the themes. And I would say much more of our time became being a listener, being an encourager, giving suggestions perhaps on how they might deal with things. My area of volunteering was with the high school students, Henniger, Nottingham, and SAS within the city of Syracuse.
Can you explain SAS for those of us who don't know what it is?
I'm not sure I can.
Syracuse Academy of Science.
Okay,
Thank you.
Syracuse Academy. So I was the Saturday morning person who took all the call-ins to kind of the helpline for the high school students. And they would call about an essay, which could be easily handled, within maybe a half hour or so. But the conversation was so much bigger than the essay. And it really, as I said, moved into a mentor, a coach. You can get through it. You can always reach out if you're struggling with this. Don't isolate. I found that many of the folks we serve have very, very large families, children 6, 8, 10, and all now in one small house, not going in and out every day. And it was very, very difficult, very, very difficult for them.
It was really hard for those students, the older students, the college students, the high school students, who now assumed another role to be working with their siblings. Mm-hmm. And I recall one student who didn't have a desk. The only place she could go was in her room and sit on her bed to get work done. And I'm sure it was like that for many, many students. So that was something I don't think we expected to hear about that. And so that, like as Linda said, that was a new role, mentorship.
Relationships developed. I mean,
Yes.
the different relationships, not just in families, the dynamics in the families, I think, changed, but also relationships with others. I mean, people were just looking for some kind of interaction. I know when I got better, I went out and I was going to the grocery store, and there was a gentleman sitting on a bench all by himself at the grocery store, and I sat down next to him, and he looked at me and he goes, "What are you sitting here for?" And I looked at him and said, "What are you sitting here for?" And he said, "I'm lonely." And I said, "Well, I am too." And we talked, and we must have talked for 15 or 20 minutes, and he decided that he needed to get out to see people, but he really wanted someone to talk to.
I see you now taking your personal experience and helping CARE frame itself differently this year. What kind of programming do you see coming for this year that may be helpful to people who are isolated and lonely?
Well, we have been meeting with the Office of the Aging, the County Office of the Aging, and much like Linda said, we got sidelined. I mean, we couldn't get into the nursing home, we couldn't get assisted living So we had to rethink this. But we weren't as lucky as you and as resourceful. We have now rebooted, and we are going to partner with many of the other areas, community outreach programs, and target individuals who need. And some of the things that you're talking about are right on our list. The calling in. There are people who are very isolated, even today. They just don't have the ability physically to get out and do that. So we're trying to see what programmings and where we can locate these in senior centers and do videos of all the programming we do so it can go into the home. As you said before, a lot of them don't have computers, so we have to make sure that we do as many different venues of delivery as we possibly can. But the phoning and just making sure that the foods and Meals on Wheels is a big part of my daughter's life and of care. We also have a lot of spirituality programming that is being done right now, and we're doing videotaping of that, so that will be on. We're developing a YouTube page and a website so people will be able to know where to go to get some of these resources. And we're always open to have individuals contact us and say, we'd like to see, can you do a program for this? I want to do financial planning. I want to do the security. I was in Florida and I had 2 or 3 calls from friends who said that their senior parents had been scammed by the call-in that your grandson has just been, arrested and you have to send a check. But their credit card, they want to give you gift cards. And, there's so many targets that they look for, and we just want to make sure that they're out there and aware. I called the police department and we're going to work with them to have some programming that they're going to do for public service and put those on the YouTube channel too. So there's a lot that can be done. It just there's 3 of us right now, so we're going to do as much as we can.
Yes.
But we're looking for volunteers as well that would like to help us with any way that they feel fit that they could do.
Terrific. Those are good programs, though. I mean, I think that people don't recognize how people are scammed, and also, I know I'm going to put a plug in here for something I know might help you, but people involved with care, and that is the Interfaith Works. Didn't come to me for a minute, but Interfaith Works has a program that they're connecting to where you call people, and they're in the process of working with a group that will get a group of people together every week, so that maybe they're going to play a game, but they're doing it by phone. It isn't just by computer, because so many people who are poor cannot afford it, or older people sometimes just don't want to bother with the technology. So I think it's great that you're looking at these other options. I think one of the things that came to me as I was thinking about this program was we keep hearing that this pandemic isn't over, and even if it were, there are more coming, that there are more of these viruses that are coming. And I'm wondering, Lynn, as a survivor, what recommendations you have for others who might contract a virus as you did. Because I know you have lessons learned from this. You've expressed them, that you got through it with your spirituality, but also that you had caring, someone looking after you. But are there other things that you could suggest to people who contract something like this virus to help them get through it?
I think a lot of things you have to do is, one of the things to do is not listen to the TV. There is just too much misinformation. And I know when I first got this, my concierge doctor came to me and said, I haven't seen this, but we're going to get through this together. However, he would come back every time and say, I looked this up and this is what I found. I think the sources for you get your information need to be trusted sources, not, some of these talk shows and things like that they don't really have any information grounded. And I'm very independent, as these women in this room are, and it's very, very hard for me to take help. And so that was another lesson learned, is that I can't do everything on my own. And having someone, being dependent on someone, I also learned how difficult that must be for seniors who have been independent all their lives. And I want to be more sensitive, because you get angry because you can't do something. And I've taken care of my parents for over 30 years before they passed. And there were days, and we had wonderful days, and there was days when they were angry. And I now know that you have these ebb and flows, that you have to accept that in your life. And I think as we're all aging, we see things things that we can't do, and you have to look for help and ask for help. But I can't stress enough to make sure that the information that you're using and you're taking in is professional information and it's grounded in science, and it's not just fabrications, because I think that there's a lot out there and a lot of people are misled by it.
I think those are wonderful suggestions. And to pick up on what you said about elderly people getting upset at times, I think as we care for people who are aging, we need to remember that there are good days and bad days, just like we have good days and bad days. Although I'm in that category now, the elderly person, but I have to remember too to accept graciously the things that are offered, because it was difficult for me. My daughter thought she was my mother during COVID.
It happened.
And she would be, you're not going to the grocery store, I'm going, what do you want? And as much as I love her and she did a beautiful job, she'd come back with something that wasn't exactly what I thought I was telling her. And I was like, and then I'm like, wait a minute, you know. And we all need to remember those things, that how we deal with each other in those situations either shows love or doesn't. And be accepting of some of the advice, because I think your ideas about turning off the news are excellent. Linda and Liz, how about you two? What recommendations might you have for people, knowing that even if we all get through this and don't get COVID and hopefully don't wind up as sick as Lynn was, how do you see helping others going forward?
I'm happy to start with that. Well, I do think, as has been mentioned, that having a commitment to service, and at Lemoyne we talk about being women and men for others, having that commitment outside of ourselves, if we are able to serve others in an ongoing way, so that when times or things might be ebbing versus flowing, for us, we know that we've got something that day where someone is depending on us. And so I think service and being for others is really very important. The other thing that I think is important, and Lynn mentioned this right up front, is her faith really helped her get through. And I think I call it being spiritually fit. And I think one gift of COVID is that we had more time to maybe get up in the morning and do some readings or sit and see what the Holy Spirit might bring forth for the day, or just give some of our challenges and isolation over to God and see what might emerge. So there was more time to be more reflective instead of boom, 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 I gotta get to this next type of thing. And there was no travel time between meetings, so it opened up some space to finish something and reflect a little bit. Or maybe at lunchtime, take in a webinar where we could hear about somebody else's opportunities. And I think the third area is making sure that we are part of a greater community, that we are in things where there is fellowship, and so that when we are in a position beyond our control, when we're more isolated, just like service, being part of maybe a spiritual book club or a whatever, mystery book club, or being in a small faith group at your church or temple community. So I think if we try to balance our spirituality and make sure that we're being of service, and make sure that we're constantly building bridges and having community, then when things get tough, we can accompany others and they can accompany us.
How about you, Liz?
It's hard to follow up on that, Lynn. Yes, for me, that the IVC became my spiritual family, and I really did look forward to our meetings And I was very grateful to Linda for facilitating and sending us articles that we did have extra time just because we weren't traveling back and forth to be able to read. I had an opportunity to attend retreats given by IVC from Chicago. Even we did something from Rome, from Father McCallum. So I think taking advantage of those opportunities to broaden what you mean by family. I took Oasis classes from all over, from San Diego Oasis, from and you said like library book clubs, or different expanding that and realizing how important it was, like you said, Lynn, for the relationships. And the other piece I think that really became more solidified for me was that spiritual piece. That was, I think, when I first joined IVC, it was about service, and I didn't realize how much I needed that spiritual piece, and my life changed, and I'm so grateful for that. And I think that's something that is just going to continue to enrich my life. And I look at this as, like Richard Rohr calls it, a crossover moment. You're at this. Yes, you can choose to look at it in a very negative way, like how did you survive it, but also how did it make you a better person? How were you able to grow? What can you take from that? And you and I have had conversations about youth and young people. And not only was this the pandemic time, but we were in horrible looking at the effects of climate change. So this was all happening at the same time. And where do you find your hope, and where do you go? And for me, that was my work with the young people, through the C-STEP program. And Pope Francis calls youth is a blessed time for the young, and it's a great gift for the church and for the world. And that really inspired me, and I keep that that quote right on my journal to keep reminding me that I might be, as you said, ebbing rather than flowing, but I can certainly help those who are flowing and be with them and look at that joy and that excitement and enthusiasm. So that's where my spirituality has helped me to just look at that, the world in that way.
I just want to add that I think Lemoyne College did a wonderful job of reaching out to alums and students, but in addition, they played a role in our community. Just one offering after another on really important subjects, interesting subjects. They had a whole Ignatian spirituality series that was extremely well attended, and that went beyond the Lemoyne community to the greater community. And I'd like to say, to people, wherever I go, there Lemoyne is, and that was really true during the pandemic, even if it was, just a little pep talk from Lemoyne's president or the students doing some kind of rally. But we
had the weekly examines too, and the meditations and all of those.
Yeah. You mentioned the hardship that many of the students went through, and I know that we've got a call from Linda Lemire, the president of Lemoyne, talking about the student fund.
Yes.
And there were many students that were having a hardship in the sense of had no computer equipment, didn't have that. And I know that we were very fortunate to be able to put up a pledge and also a campaign, a challenge, so that if for every one that they donated, and we were just overwhelmed with excitement when we saw the amount of support that came through. And that wasn't just Lemoyne community. That was outside our community, but they're all there. I think that you say one for all, and
Yes.
for each other, Lemoyne is definitely that environment.
Yeah.
And Linda's leadership has shown so much to so many that she's got many good ideas, and we're there for the students at all times, and it's great. It's really good.
Yeah, and I feel that the Jesuits
Yes.
strongly and clearly say that success is beyond the college campus and into the community. And I feel like programs like CARE and IVC are an extension of that.
It's eerie when you're on the campus and there's no students. We went several times, and they make the environment, and it's that youth that you used to speak about.
The vibrancy.
Yes.
So you've all addressed that now, how important that is, the youth. But we're looking at the seniors too here. So I think you've made some excellent ideas of how one stays connected. And I know that at the end, our wonderful videographer and sound guy will put up on the screen for you how you can find out more about CARE and the Ignatian Volunteer Corps. But before we close, I really would like to know if there's anything else any of you would like to say about your experience, your COVID experience.
As taxing and frustrating and isolating it was, I really do choose to see the gifts, and I feel more bridges were built than broken during COVID. And the question of the day really became, how can I be of service? And that may be to my elderly mom, to a sibling, to a shut-in neighbor, a student. It really, I didn't know, but it was kind of that God make me your instrument. And maybe my service might not be exactly how I planned it the previous year, but I can still be of service. And as Ignatius says, service without counting the cost. And I think our programs do that. I think we are giving service without counting the cost. That's what we're here for, men and women for others.
Thank you. Liz?
I think I learned a lot about patience and not having such high expectations and really living in the moment. So and appreciating. There were more times where I could be on my own outside walking. My husband and I would go to Oneida Shores. I don't know if you can remember when our county executive said you can only go out like the certain odd or even days, and it was being able to just go walk in the park on a Sunday afternoon, and like you're still keeping away from people, but at least you were out there, and that was something I think that I don't think we would have done that before, but it was a really nice opportunity to get out and do some new things, and so yeah, it's just that patience and just knowing that everything's going to be good. Good days are coming.
Thank you.
I think that you said both of you said everything I want to say. It makes you stop and you slow down a little bit. And I think we put value on things that we didn't value as much as we should have. The time, the people, relationships. I think that it has opened up my eyes to realize that there's so much more that I need to do and want to do. But I haven't got to do it right now. I can make sure that it happens and make sure I plant the seeds. But you just need to look for others to guide you, as you said, where do I need to be today? What can I do to make a change this moment? And I think that's really important.
Well, thank you to our three guests. And before I close today, I had thought about actually using the prayer that Linda quoted a little bit from, but I thought maybe this one might be better for the end of this session. So we pray for your love and compassion to abound as we walk through this challenging season. We ask for wisdom for those who bear the load of making decisions with widespread consequences. We pray for those who are suffering with sickness and all who are caring for them. We ask for protection for the elderly and vulnerable to not succumb to the risks of the virus. We pray for misinformation to be curbed, that fear may take no hold in hearts and minds. As we exercise the good sense that you and your mercy provide, may we also approach each day in faith and peace, trusting in the truth of your goodness towards us. Amen, and thank you all for joining us.
Hey there, my name is Chris Spilka and I'm the director here at Christ the King Retreat House in Syracuse. And I want to thank the CARE program for coming here. They're a tremendous organization. We are excited to host them. Since 1944, we have a tremendous legacy that actually began with the Jesuits over at Lemoyne College, if you can believe it. They began this beautiful tradition here at the Retreat House that carries on to today. In 1994, the Diocese of Syracuse purchased this place for $1 whole. It's the best bargain, I think, in the history of mankind. And since then, we have served as a refuge for many and assisted in their spiritual development. Maybe you are an individual that is really struggling despair and really feeling downtrodden these days. If you're feeling that way, this is a place that is perfect for you. We have many conference spaces and rooms that you can sit, relax, and refocus in a beautifully renovated chapel that you can come pray and talk to the Lord and let these different burdens off your heart. Maybe you're a group leader that is just looking to refocus and recalibrate the mission of your organization. If that is you, then we have 2 beautiful conference spaces in our Merton room and Loyola room that's perfect for the size of any group. If you are interested in coming here to Christ the King Retreat House, I invite you to check out our inquiry link on our website, ctkretreat.com. You can click on the inquiry there and you'll be connected with me, and we will book your retreat, whatever it may be. I look forward to speaking with you, and I hope that you'll join our beautiful tradition here and be a part of our history at Christ the King Retreat House. God bless you.